Well, welcome to the latest Smart Consulting webinar. Hey guys,
Hello.
Hello.
it's this is a fun topic. We've been having a lot of side conversations around. There's a lot happening around this space, and each of us independently have been off doing aspects of this. Like I ran a governance workshop in Dallas. You guys have been involved. Like Galen, you did some
Copilot
training on
training.
this, and
Yep. Been delivering some Copilot training in different parts of the West Coast, Canada.
well, what's interesting about this one is that we knew we were, as we were gearing up in this series talking about governance, that we were going to get to the deployment of Copilot. And as we were organizing stuff, in fact, we were having a conversation about creating like the checklist and some other materials and guidance for clients. Microsoft comes out with their deploying Microsoft 365 Copilot in 4 chapters. And so that's what this webinar, I thought this would be really interesting to go and look at. Here's what Microsoft has put together as their penultimate list of what you need to be looking at for deploying Copilot, and to kind of do a check against our real world experience on this topic.
Yeah, sounds great. Bring it on.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Here's the title of this. So thank you everybody for joining. Just some of the background. I think it's always good where hopefully people are following along the series. Of course, you can find these videos out through the Smart Consulting YouTube page, and we all have linked to it off of our personal pages, so you can definitely find this. But Sharon, maybe you can introduce the company very quickly.
Yeah, Smarter Consulting is a consulting. We do consulting services, training services, and app building services and products. And we'll go over that. We founded in 2017, so we've been around for 7 years now. I'm a woman, so it's a woman-owned business. And we've been doing this for a long time, and we're a really nice big connection of like networked people that have come together that are all experts in their field. And then we have an underlying group that basically supports all of that. And we have a ton of credentials, and we're a certified women-owned business. So we just try to kind of help everybody with what they need in the Microsoft space. And we've caught these like 4 pillars that have really grown out of this. So Smarter Consulting, the services was really kind of where we built everything on. And that's kind of our biggest pillar around strategy, productivity, administration. You can see all the services that we offer, governance services. Out of that, we do a lot of training as well. And so we've built this Smarter Learning training pillar where we do a lot of training services primarily around Microsoft products. We do a lot of Copilot training lately. And then out of that, we've got Smarter Governance. And that's because we spend a significant amount of time helping people with governance related services, implementing governance, strategizing around governance, training on governance. And so we've got a whole pillar built for that. And then along the way, we've been building all these apps for our clients. And so we finally got together and said, hey, you know what? We've been building all these apps all these years. Why not start offering them out? So we now have a brand new pillar called Smarter Apps, and that's going to basically be the apps and the solutions that we've been building all these years. We're now going to make available out to people as public offerings.
And I will point out too is that we've got a page on the website that's getting ready to go live, but it kind of falls under the Smarter Consulting, but we also have been heavily involved in migrations for a long time. And so that is also a specialty in our methodology, very efficient in doing large, whether it's, small to mid-sized companies to enterprise, upgrades from on-prem to the cloud or from version to version, or helping clean up, revamp a company's environment, clean up their data in the back end and all of the governance practices around that. So again, there's a lot of client solutions that kind of cover the gamut of everything
There's
that
a
we
little
do.
dot on there for migration.
Yeah, we're expanding the dot, people, just to help, because it is a very popular topic. And then Sharon, so you've been talking the most here. Introduce yourself, then Galen and myself.
Hi, my name is Sharon Weaver, and I'm the CEO of Smarter Consulting. I've been in technology for almost 30 years now, very heavily involved in the Microsoft space, very heavily involved in the SharePoint and the content management productivity space. Along the way, I've really been able to connect with the Microsoft product groups. And as a part of that, I have developed a ton of Microsoft credentials. In addition to that, I've been part of the BA space for a very, very long time. And gotten some credentials around business analysis and Six Sigma to help people be more successful in what they do every day.
Great. And hello, everybody. My name is Galen Keene. I've been in IT for over 20 years now, working primarily in what is now considered modern work, so the SharePoint space, for over 18 years. As a full-time employee, I led many teams focusing on solution architecture and business process optimization and automation, spanning many industries, from education to and defense through construction and finance, and put on a consulting hat, and now look to help clients do it better, faster, and correct, which is, I think, why we're here today. What is the correct way or the best way to adopt Copilot? And hint, hint, we've been doing this for many years. So there is a good way to do it, a best practice to ensure that you get the maximum value in the least amount of time.
And I'm Christian Buckley. I'm a 13-time Microsoft 365 MVP and Microsoft Regional Director. I've been in this space for a long time. It still sounds so great to say that, hey, I was on that initial team that built what is now Office 365. You know, is core component of Microsoft 365. I was at Microsoft for years. I joined to help launch that program in what was called Microsoft Managed Solutions, which then became BPOS, or Business Productivity Online Services, and then became Office 365. But I've also had extensive career over the last 15 years working with some of the largest ISVs in the governance and migration space within SharePoint and Microsoft 365. So I bring a lot of that experience. And then going back to my first role, again, I've been in tech for 33 years now, but started as a business analyst function and then technical project management. So I have that background in helping organizations become more operationally secure, standardized, clean up the process, the people, the roles, the function, as well as being a subject matter expert on the technology. So yeah, we've got a good mix of skills and backgrounds to cover kind of all aspects of these topics. So
Absolutely.
it's always great. Well, I thought we'd start. I know we're going to jump in and we want to get to kind of the meat of things. And so we've got a couple slides just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. If I can forward the slides, there we go. So talk about, what is Copilot? And I know that people are still kind of asking this question, trying to understand the scope of this. How do you guys answer this? How do you describe it? What's your elevator pitch for Copilot?
I mean, I like to say first, there's kind of two sides to this, right? It's the application that lays over all your other applications to help you use them easier and better. And I like to tell people it's kind of like Jarvis. And because people can understand that, like if you've watched Iron Man and you've watched how Jarvis just kind of sits over everything, it's not the application that is doing everything. It's the application that's helping you to use the stuff that you already have.
You have to remember, Iron Man sometimes goes against the recommendations of Jarvis.
Yeah, many times, right?
Yeah. And that's usually when he gets in trouble, but yes. Well, I broke it down into, I think we covered this in a previous webinar, but broke it down into 5 kind of areas if you think about what it really is comprised of. So one, it's like what you just described. It says AI powered assistant. It's important to understand, Copilot versus any other AI tool out there. It's where is it storing, where is it getting its information? Where is that large language model, that learning that it's trained on to provide the answers that you're looking for? And it's so important that you understand the differences. That, like, if I've got intellectual property that my company has, and I'm looking for AI assistance to summarize this or find certain insights, the wrong thing to do would be to go and upload that up into ChatGPT, for example,
Right.
because then that IP becomes part of the internet, and everyone will have access to that IP that you've just trained it on. So that's one of the things that I love about an enterprise class AI assistant like Copilot, is that, like, I could even go in now with the announcements of, agents everywhere and agents in SharePoint in the cloud. But to be able to go and I can build, and this is one of my first experiments when SharePoint or Copilot for SharePoint was released, to build a Copilot that only I could see and pump it full of all the information that I need so I could go there, very specialized, only people that need to have access to that data, so I can make queries, get responses, add additional information that is 100% secure within that enterprise.
I think that you cannot overstate that enough. The thing that's happening most right now is shadow AI. We used to think of shadow IT. I think shadow AI is the new thing. Like you said, Christian, data is being leaked out to the different AI applications that exist. And the Microsoft Copilot enables you to keep all of that within your security boundary. And the importance of that cannot be understated.
Yeah. The ability to what it can find and can't find is really a big deal, because we talk about the idea of giving it access to everything we own and everything we have, and following, but then it also has to follow all of our rules, all of our policies, all our permissions management. And so I think, to your point, Galen, just understanding, and also to Christian's point, right, there's a difference between the public versions of AI that will go out there and have access to literally everything, and so you're feeding into that public forum, as opposed to something like Copilot that is similar to that, but is limited by your permissions, your scope, your content, your policies, but still helps you to do all the things. So it's not doing anything you couldn't already do. It's not giving you access to anything you couldn't already access. What it's doing is helping you to interact with that information and that content and those applications in a way that you couldn't before.
I can't help but make the connection going back to my data warehousing days. And if anybody that worked in the space, and young kids probably don't understand this concept of not having all data from everywhere at any time at your fingertips. All this was, we would go and build these massive databases, and sometimes I worked for the phone company in the early 90s, mid 90s, and massive amounts of customer data in there. And when the internal marketing users wanted to go in and do queries against this data and pull insights from it, they couldn't directly to the data. We would have to go and pull snippets of information based on their requirements down to this subset of data, which still, with these powerful front end tools, could take hours to compile the results of those things, only to find out that we're missing key data from this other system that we would then have to go out and pull down and combine in and massage that data constantly. And now we can add just unstructured data in, chaotic data from whatever the format of that is, and AI can rapidly go in and assess, summarize, pull insights out of that. You still have to do the data. This is one of those misnomers about AI. You can't just put garbage in and think you're going to get the perfect answers. You still need to do the data cleanup and things around that. But that not really what we're focusing on here. But yeah, there's still work to be done here. But I do want, just to round out this, that describes at a high level. I mean, the other core pieces, a differentiator for Copilot, of course, is the integration with Microsoft 365. The fact that you are pulling data from the tools that you're using every day. And so that's also something that's very unique to Copilot. If you are not sharing all of your content, all your proprietary information straight out to the internet. Task automation, to be able to go in and simplify repeated activities, helping with as an idea generator. But somebody just described it yesterday or day before yesterday as like no more blank pages. Like, where do I
Yes.
even begin?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a fantastic usage of Copilot. And then, of course, it has the data and context awareness and other integrations. There's more that's happening. Agents kind of fits into that enhanced collaboration. The ability soon for the agent, you ask a question and it knows it doesn't have the information or the ability to go and answer that, but it's aware of other agents and can go and call on other agents to answer that question and get what you need if you have your data structured, if you have your permissions set up correctly, all the things on the back end to be able to see that. So yeah, it can be incredibly powerful. Why do I need Copilot? I mean, this kind of goes into again what we've shared in past presentations, but why do I need it? I mean, data overload. I need to be more efficient. I need to do more with less. I need to, I need ideas around this. So things like answering emails. I'm very brisk typically in my email. I'm trying to be nice to myself, brisk in my emails to responses back to people. And sometimes I realized I need a more polished answer for that. And so instead of going back and wasting time, like, how do I phrase this right? I can get help to generate that response that sounds more, empathetic, more
I do that a
human
lot
than I
too.
would. Yeah,
I'm very short in my emails because I'm like, I just try to answer the question and get on. And I've started using, I'll pop it, and it's starting to learn my tone. So I'll pop up in an email, and I'm even getting to the point I don't even give it any information. I'm like, draft a response and let's see what it says. And it's starting to get more and more and more to sound like me, but I didn't have to write as many words to get to the answer. The other thing that I really like, especially in Outlook, is that I can, if you write the same type of email a lot, so if you're doing something that you do a lot of the same type of thing, you can just say, hey, write an email to do this, and it'll fill out the outline for you, and then you just have to put the information in. I think like it's been a game changer for how quickly I can respond to things.
yeah. Well, my favorite from these reasons why I need Copilot is the last one, the reducing the cognitive load. I mean, this is the major thing that I absolutely love, to be able to go in and take a look at an article or an ebook or a white paper or just a massive amount of data, an Excel spreadsheet, and to be able to then summarize that. Like, what do I need to know? It's still one of my favorite prompts for Copilot is, like, every week I do it a couple times over the course of the week, but to go and say, look at all of my meetings, my chats, my emails, and what are the asks? Have I missed anything? Have I, what are the actions from these requests? What have I missed? And that's one of the best things. Um, it's for a while back, like, I was very much into, Outlook is a great example of this, creating folders in organizing the email and moving things across. The problem with that in setting that up, rather than having everything flat at the top level, is I often, like, emails, like, escape me because it went down to a folder. I just didn't see it
Yeah.
there when it came in. And I had built this structure which I thought would be more efficient, but I've created little silos of information. And so Copilot helps unearth those
Mhm.
requests, those things that are out there, specifically when people are asking for help on items, so I don't miss anything.
I recently used a similar technique on a daily basis while at a conference for several days because I did not put my out of office on. I simply did not want to be out of office. I wanted to be able to reply back and do that intelligently. So understanding everything that was being asked, as well as the priorities associated with those requests, was something that Copilot was able to help me out with. And so, although I wasn't engaged in every activity that was occurring uh, as in the moment as I often am, I was still able to reply and not be out of office to everyone else.
Right. All right. Well, let's get into the deployment recommendation. So Microsoft produced this. So this the website. We're going to jump in. We're actually going to walk through and talk about like the 4 chapters that they outlined. This was, again, it was the way that it was pitched when they made it available. They said this is like as I described it, the penultimate guide from Microsoft, the best practices. It really is a collection of links and resources, different pieces to it. And so, well, let me first say, here's what's in it, and then we'll jump into our thoughts on what's in it. That's really kind of the meat of it. So here's the breakdown of the 4 chapters. The getting governance right. So talking about governance at that higher level, what it is, an overview of that. We all have a lot of thoughts and feedback on that section for sure. Then looking at implementation itself. So the objectives, the models, how to do it the right way the first time. Third, focusing on adoption, and adoption engagement is key. And I'm so glad that a few years back, Microsoft kind of woke up to this with their own software. This is across the board, company wide. What was the change for Microsoft when they realized, so before all the AI stuff came up, they realized they were so focused on selling licenses. And when it came up, these massive enterprise agreements were coming up for renewal of Office 365, and large companies were not renewing at the levels. They might have, 20,000 seats, 20,000 licenses, and they're reducing that down to like 5,000. Like, what's going on? Is that, well, people just aren't using these tools, so we want to reduce the licenses. And Microsoft realized success isn't licenses deployed, they've logged in at least once a month, therefore they're engaged. No, how are people actually using the capabilities? And that change, and this is a longer philosophical discussion around it, but for Microsoft, because it changed the way that they looked at some features as well. Fascinating. If you're interested in looking at the why behind a lot of the decisions Microsoft makes, I highly recommend bookmarking the Work Lab blog, which was, I think it was initially in conjunction with the Microsoft R&D and the business units, but it gives you insights into the data and the decisions behind a lot of the products and features and why Microsoft is doing things the way that they're doing it. And a lot of it comes back to this point of it's not good enough that people own the product. They need to actually be using it to get the full benefits out of that. And then the last part of it is supporting it ongoing. So let's, with that, let's actually walk through and look at the guidance, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about it section by section here. So here's actually the website, if you've not yet seen it. So we're, so we're going to kind of scroll through it. So that you can actually go and download this as a PDF as well. I think for this sake, for us, this conversation, I'm just going to keep it on the article that's out there. So you can actually go and search for deploying Microsoft 365 Copilot in 4 chapters. You'll find this article. And so it walks you through the web version. Everything that's in the PDF is in this article, this online version. It almost looks like a sway, folks. It's, with all the various resources here. But you've got the chapters that I just outlined, a bunch of other downloadable assets and things that are out there. So there's some great information. They, of course, they give you some data around Copilot, what it's doing, some of the great numbers that came out of the initial piloting of that. Which is all great. But getting into governance, getting governance right. So you look at the sections, it's picking the governance path that's right for you, laying the groundwork with proper labeling. When you look at this, I mean, you made a comment, Sharon, before we started recording about, are all companies, starting this process on equal footing? Like, this is making a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, first of all, I think it's fantastic that Microsoft is providing this level of guidance and adoption support, implementation support. They're not just like, here's software, have a nice life. They're like, hey, look, here's a plan to follow, so that when you come back and say, yeah, are we doing the right things? There's at least a plan to follow. But I do think that this context makes the assumption that you're already at a level of maturity, that you have implemented this and you understand what all of this means. And I think what we really find in the real world is that there's a lot of businesses that ultimately have never even gotten to this, or maybe have approached this, started it. Maybe they made a governance document 15, 20 years ago. It's sitting in a SharePoint site somewhere, never to have been seen again. So I think they're not all on equal footing. I think everybody's at different levels of this. And I think it's a matter of, where are you and where do you want to be when it comes to this?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's very important to remember that Microsoft is creating this, and oftentimes just to reemphasize how valuable this is as a starting point, oftentimes what you see in these articles is reflected in Microsoft's own experience. So, they're doing this internally, as Christian referred to earlier, and taking those lessons learned and making them available to us in this sense. But yeah, where do you start? Especially if you're strong in maybe you're strong in training, but you're not really strong in internal marketing and communications. So every company has a different starting point. How do you align with this content?
What's I look at this, and as we've had conversations, I mean, each one of these boxes, you can have hours long discussion around that. If an organization is like, well, what does this actually mean? Do we have a self-service model? What does it actually mean? Are we prepared for that, to go into that? It's like, I always make the case, like with Power Platform, and it's described as like no code, low code, and I always say the same thing. It's like, there is no such thing as no code. It's low code to build something that's truly automated, that is personalized for your organization. You start getting in there. There's logic changes. Like you start to get into the coding, the engineering aspect of those solutions, where you have to have some level of competence, of expertise, to go and build those things. So to take a non-engineer to go and build a complex company-wide process, to build out, well, what does self-service mean for your organization? There's so much that's embedded within that one piece. And so it's interesting to see like these little steps of go and do this along this path, and these massive, the learning curve just shoots up. There's just a lot that's within each one of these categories. So if anything else, like each of these discussion points of, what does this actually mean? What are the policies, the rules that we need to adhere to in our industry, the size of company, with our IP, kind of all those things. It's a great conversation starter, but it's not a roadmap. It's like a menu of items that might be on your roadmap.
Yeah, it's a high level strategy guide to say, okay, here's some of the things you should be thinking about. It's not a how to. It's not detailed implementation plan. It's not detailed strategy. What it is high level strategy that gives you things to think about. And you then also have to know what things apply to us, what things have we done, what things have we not done. When we talk about best practices, which things should we be worrying about, which things should we prioritize, and how do we implement these properly? And so one of the things that Microsoft has done a great job too is they put out the Copilot Success Kit to go along with this, and it's got a lot of great things. It's got templated emails and communication strategies and marketing strategies and social media strategies, all kinds of great things that your organization needs. But like I said before, every organization is a different size and has different needs, and they're at a different place in that process. And that Success Kit kind of really takes the approach that you're already an enterprise, more mature organization that can just take those pieces of information and do what you want with them. And one of the things I know that, and the M365 conference coming up in the spring, I'm going to be doing a session that's about right sizing that success kit. And I think part of it that people need to understand is that this is all such great information, but everybody's a little bit different and everybody needs something different. And so many people need help right now to know where they're at and how to get where they want to go.
Yeah, it's not a methodology, folks. I mean, it really is like an outline of, I mean, fantastic resources like what you've just described, but it's the same thing. It's like, here are all the various different options. It's like back in the, late 90s when I started working with other clients on building out project management organizations. I always describe it as like I would literally walk around with a 3-ring binder of all these templates. I had my methodology outlined. I had examples that were there. So as I would sit there and talk with the client, and I would say, like, this is what I've done, this structure, here's the meaning of these different pieces. What makes sense for your organization? It's not to adopt everything I've created in this methodology. It's let's define the pieces that make sense for your organization. Here's how they fit together. And then here's a methodology to get, there's a process to walk through. So I guess there's like, it's great to go and look at this, how we did it resources. I always love those sessions by Microsoft people showing like a little bit of the great Oz behind the curtain, like how things are actually working. See what I did? I made it relevant to Wicked, which is out in theaters now, people.
So good.
Seeing it tomorrow night, by the way. But yeah, with these great resources that are out there, but it is overwhelming, to say the least, for organizations that are like, I still don't know where to start. It's great that there's these checklists and these different things, more questions. Again, this would be built into a methodology and approach to make sure that you're answering these questions. But, again, what else? What are the precursors to even be able to answer those questions? Am I ready? Do I have the right people in the room to be able to answer that? How's it being documented and captured? Where do we go from here? I guess I should, I meant to switch it over to, as we're talking about it, the moving away from the Microsoft content into our guidance on this. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why we offer some of our, our governance options, our offerings are to help people to define these basic steps. And we'll get to that at the very end of this, of like our core offerings here. We've got 3, but to keep it very, very simple. But the first is to help organizations define, create the baseline of where they are today, what they have, they've already completed, what they have documented, what they know, and then where they want to go, and then help plan out the strategy to get from today's environment to that future environment.
I find that in our experience, and this is why we've put these things together, our experience has been that I get people who reach out to me and say, we deployed this product, this solution, this strategy, this methodology. It doesn't really even matter. Like, it's so generic. We've done this thing that we were told was going to be click next, 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 right? If you're an admin, you get that, right? Click next, 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 next. It's all fine. It'll just go, it'll just work. It'll just do the thing. And they do that, they do that with the guidance from whoever has created, the product or the methodology or the strategy or whatever. And they've implemented, they followed the directions, they click the next, next, next. And then they struggle because they're like, okay, I spent all this money and all this effort on implementing this thing, and we're not getting the ROI, the value, the experience out of it that the marketing promoted to us. And I know this is a very common pain point. Every time I talk to people, they're like, yeah, that's totally the story. And so what they do is they ping me and they're just like, hey, we did this thing. We know you know about it. We set it up. It's not giving us what we want. What can we do better? And so we have put these offerings together because we've done this so many times now, where we've gone in and said, okay, we hear you. We know you tried to do this. Let's come in and let's kind of, I don't want to start over from scratch, but let's understand what you've done and what you haven't done. Let's put a plan together and let's help you get the full value out of the things that you're paying for and the stuff that you're invested in, whether that's money or time or energy or effort or whatever. Let us come and help you get that value out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key emphasis, right? Is value and really understanding how you can align all of the resources that Christian was just displaying with how you define value. And I think that's the key strength that these offerings bring to the table is understanding your definition of value and aligning that with the technology, mainly so that we can go through your process and your people to deliver that value that much faster. That's the center of the universe really is that.
And I think that for the other 3 chapters, so you can kind of get what we're doing here is like we're sharing, what Microsoft presents here and the list of resources just to kind of summarize it very quickly, and then talk about kind of the gap between, execution, the implementation, the real world, like what we've actually seen with doing these kinds of deployments. And so here, I mean, I love the, in the implementation that it starts out with like the idea to go and pilot. And it's one of the questions I ask now doing anything AI Copilot related sessions. And when I talk to an audience about that, I say, like, show of hands, like, is anybody doing this like fully in production, starting to deploy it? And not many hands go up. But then the next question is, are you piloting? Are you playing with the technology like officially? And there's a lot of people that are like, well, there's like 1 or 2, we're experimenting, we don't know what we want to do and when, the time frame. But then there are a number of organizations that are like, yeah, we're piloting with 1 or 2 organizations and slowly expanding on that, learning, developing this is how we will leverage this content going forward. Here's how you incorporate this into the way that we do business today. And it is so critical because of how different it is to have, and even Copilot is evolving very quickly, the way that it works, and how integrated it is into all of the various applications that we work with. But to understand those changes, keep on top of what's happening on the back end so that you don't become even more overwhelmed with how rapidly things are changing. If you're not, I guess my point is, if you're not piloting now, a year from now, it's going to be so much more difficult to jump in. So get your toes in the water now so that you have a better understanding of the changes that are happening.
Yeah. And I would even advocate that when you do that, a lot of people that I speak to are you're rolling these licenses out to a couple people in IT, right? And I think Christian, what you said was get that pilot out into the business, address some actual business scenarios because Copilot can change the way you work in those scenarios, not augment them, but actually change them. And it's important to have a pulse on that to understand, how that process is functioning now and where it can be improved so that you can measure those changes and understand how much it did impact the day-to-day lives of the people involved in those processes. That really does, I think, speak to the value that you get from the technology and warrants the cost and future investments into licensing the technology.
Yeah, being able to identify those, like you said, those little baby process changes that happen as a result of implementing something like Copilot, I think gives you an idea of these are the things that we are then going to have to maybe take a bigger work, put some bigger work into, some more effort into. We think about even like what got mentioned with self-serve and things like that. It's going to change. You're absolutely right. It will augment your experience at first, but ultimately it is going to change the way that people work. It's going to change our processes. It's going to change roles and responsibilities. It's going to change so many things that you don't want to wait until you have put that out for your entire organization to determine what that change is. You'd rather do it in a small piece, understand it, and then be able to be prepared to then respond to those changes in the way that your company or your industry feels comfortable.
I think even looking at, here again, leveraging Microsoft's experience, learning from our implementation, so much as I think you said it before we started recording, Sharon, we're talking about, like, if you look at it from the M365 maturity model perspective, there's a lot of assumptions around this content that you're at this higher level of, like, a 400 level of across your communications, your governance, compliance, security, kind of each of those areas, in customer, your employee engagement, kind of all those different areas, communications, to be able to do a lot of these pieces. Like, okay, we're just going to adjust the way that we're already doing those things. The reality is that the majority of organizations don't have that level of rigor around their communications, their change management, to be able to, I mean, you look at one of these 6 bullets here, and there's a massive project could be behind every one of these to get to that piece. And so that's where, again, not where, don't want to hit people on the head too hard with the hammer of reality, but like, there's help out there. I mean, this is the kind of stuff when we go in and we work with organizations. Again, you might be very advanced in a couple different areas, but need remedial help in other areas to get caught up to the place where you're better prepared for the rate of change that will come with AI.
It's doing just enough to ensure that you maximize the value for your goal, right? And especially when you're rolling out Copilot, adopting it, you need to see that value in order to justify all of the licensing costs, and to ensure that other members of your organization see the value and want the technology. And it really does begin to snowball from that perspective and lead into self-service and agents speaking to agents and all of those good things.
Yep. Again, great stuff that's out there. There is the optimization assessment. There's learning path data. I mean, there's so much content that's behind each one of these areas. But again, I mean, that's the whole point, is that, you can feel overwhelmed very quickly. What do I actually go do? What makes sense for my organization? And that's where, like, you do a lot of reading. You could, if you have the internal team, if you've got a PM team that it can go and take this and look at it holistically, and then look at each of those aspects. I always recommend people go become familiar with the maturity model. Super easy to find that M365 maturity model. It's all out there. It's community driven content. Sharon's actually on the board that helps put those monthly calls together around that. But have a better idea and understanding of where your organization is today. It's going to help with whatever then the decisions are for your path forward. So again, some great resources, great insights at a higher level. But we just find that most organizations realize very quickly that they need help on that. So you've got experts that are out there, consulting partners, community members. So, you can just reach out and talk to us and let us know where you need help. And it's great to have those conversations. As I made a big deal of the beginning of it, as historically Microsoft recognizing adoption and engagement. And I always, adoption and engagement, I define them as, adopting is, okay, we've got the licenses, we're set up, we're using them on a regular basis. But engaged is that next step. It's like moving to advocacy. It's where people understand. It's where the business has been transformed. I'm going to use another phrase out there. I'm trying to cut down on my use of the word transformed, transformation. But this really is where people, like, a change has occurred and they've moved away from the old way of doing them to the new way. And it's almost like you've forgotten. This is where I go now to do these. This is a different way of working that's better, that's improved.
Yeah, I think, and we talk about the aha moment. You see that all over Microsoft stuff. And it's that moment where you've realized that that particular tool or strategy or process change has made a significant difference in the way that you do things. And I think there's a lot of people, like you said, that will adopt something, but they won't engage in it. And so what happens is I have a new product, I have a new process, I have a new thing, but it hasn't changed the way that I work, which means I haven't experienced the value out of it. And so I think people are so afraid to change. They're so afraid to do something different. And when it comes especially to something like Copilot, it is such a big change in the way that people will experience their day-to-day work that it's something that it's easier to see the value because it's such a big change. But I think if an industry or an organization doesn't already understand that they have to change to be able to see the value, that's where a lot of them they can't really take advantage of the content that you're showing here today that Microsoft has put out, because they don't realize that they have to change to get there.
Well, one thing I do really like is the it's kind of highlighted here is the under Get Ready, like building a champions program. So again, talk about here's a little bit of information. This is a big thing for a lot of organizations that don't have it in place. I actually just did a session a couple of weeks back on building mentoring programs, champion programs. I mean, as you both know, we've all been involved in champion programs to identify who those people are in the organization, but to structurally make it part of your process. This is just rule of thumb, folks, is that if you are in the business of rolling out new platforms, new tools and things out there, make this part of your tool belt to go and identify who are my champions, who are the people that are going to drive this, who are the people that when we do the training and we roll something out that's brand new and we walk away from the IT or the leadership team, where do the employees go when they're asking questions? Is there somebody who self-identifies, stands up and says, hey, here's how you do it. I've done a little bit more research, or they become like the go-to person for that. Find those people, support those people, give them more tools, recognize them, reward them. But that's an example of something, a microcosm that's within this larger, methodology, this approach to rolling out Copilot.
And that Copilot rollout should start there, right? As you're thinking about the POC, you should be identifying who those champions are in your company so that they are the ones that are involved in the POC, that you're very much impacting their day-to-day, and they will help you understand the value, the efficiencies gained from the software. So they become not just your boots on the ground kind of technical go-to resources for other members of your organization once the software is rolled out. They are your champions. They're talking about how much efficiencies and value they've gained from the technology, and that will help snowball the successful, sustained adoption or engagement that you're looking to achieve.
I mean, here's another great example. A lot of there's great, I'm scrolling past this, a lot of great advice that's out there, but it's so high level. Like, hey, to better understand how your end users are working and using and adopting and things, roll out Viva. Okay, yeah,
Use Viva.
Right. There's so much that's under the hood there with Viva. You have to remember that like Viva is an overarching brand around these individual products, some of which are very different, completely different areas. And so each one of them has their world, their experts, the expertise out there, a methodology, a strategy for going. So not all of these pieces make sense for your organization, but you do need to have an idea of, how are we tracking and measuring, what does success look like for what we're doing? And then how do we track and measure this and then provide guidance back and improve upon constantly optimizing the things that we deploy. Copilot is no different than any other technology that you'd roll out in that way, that you need to look back, learn from mistakes, embrace where you have had success, and learn from the community and improve upon it. So again, more high-level checklists, which again may be too much too quickly for most organizations that need more foundational help around this. But I mean, that's the whole point is that it gets you thinking about, are we even ready for this piece? And if we are moving forward with this, how can we do it in a measured, responsible way so we can show, hey, we deployed this, we're seeing this level of activity, here's the business benefit, the value we're getting back out. That's the key. That's what the executives want.
Well, and just to reiterate, all of this content also assumes that you've already done the pre-work. And so it assumes it takes that into consideration that you are already at a place that you have already done all the things to get you to this point. And I think, when we go into organizations and they say we did all the things Microsoft told us to do, we followed the checklist. Well, what they forgot was they had not done or were not up to date on the pre-work that was required to be ready for this to be able to go out successfully. And so they will experience, some sort of pain in that implementation. And oftentimes we will come in to work with them and we'll be like, oh, you did everything right, but here's the thing you were missing to get to this point. And oftentimes we can come in, help them kind of fill in the gaps for the pre-work maybe that they were missing. And then they kind of start over and do kind of the same thing. And all of a sudden it just works. So just remember, not only is this here, but it's also assuming that you've done that pre-work.
And this last chapter here too, again, there's so much that's here, but the ongoing support of this, just roll out support and then you're good. Just go, just do it. So the kind of the principles of strategizing, and then, different best practices, different, guidance on these different topics, things to think about. What is the right mix for your organization? Do you need it to have, a very much heavy on the self-serve? Do you have experts that are there? Do you have, I know some organizations, some industries, I've worked in them in past organizations where any request to IT, like we had internally service level agreements, we had response times back on requests across the board, no matter what it was. So at least they knew it was being triaged. This is where it is. This is what they can expect for a response back. That was kind of built into that. So, I mean, here's again, just a list of resources and questions around supporting this, how Microsoft did it, a bunch of resources out there. But again, it's not a methodology. It's not a find your way, here's every possible option, walk you through. It's high level best practices. You then need to take it, figure out the pieces that make sense for your organization and fold that back in. It's sometimes the hard part with any of this is remembering that it's not just a checklist. Governance, we all say this. Governance is not a checklist, a plan. We've documented, we've checked it off. Where at the end, every box is ticked. We're now well governed. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's more of a lifestyle change.
Yeah. I think people approach governance the same way they like to approach, maybe physical health. So, we think about weight loss and exercise, and everybody thinks if they buy the book, that they'll immediately lose weight and be healthy, right? And I think we look at governance the same way. It's like, well, I bought the governance book and I did the checklist, and it's now sitting in the SharePoint folder somewhere, collecting dust, and we are governed. And I think it's no different, right? Like you said, it's a lifestyle change. It's how are you implementing this level of rigor in your life day to day, in your business day to day, in your processes day to day, to be able to continue to stay governed. And anytime you change something, or is that living, breathing, organic, document, knowledge source, wherever you're kind of keeping that information, are you continuing to keep that updated, much like you might daily track your weight or your, inches or your size goals, whatever health goals it is you have for yourself. Like a lot of people track those on a regular basis. You have to track governance goals on a regular basis too. Are you meeting monthly? Are you meeting quarterly? How often are you updating those things? It is living, breathing, organic, day-to-day change that has to be managed.
Yeah. And I think it's important to understand that that in and of itself feels very overwhelming, right? Like we're all, uh, for when we're recording this, we're coming up on that time of year where we're going to make some New Year's resolutions, maybe, and that all feels very overwhelming. Uh, just like reading the 4 chapters in the article, right? So it's really understanding the right size, like what you need for your organization, doing just enough to be successful, and doing just enough governance to be successful as well, whether that's from a security or compliance perspective, or in the engagement of any software, and in this case, Copilot. And I think that's where our guidance is very beneficial, because we understand, we've worked with enough companies and enough industries, and across different sizes, from small business to enterprise, to understand where and how to right size that so that you meet your goals and get the value from the tech.
And I think this is a great way to approach this. And I running this workshop, and I know that as we're developing, we have our project management methodology, our approach with customers, trying to explain this, that look, there's not a set, methodology necessarily for building governance, because that it's the classic, the first answer is, well, it depends. But this is and I did this workshop a couple weeks back, um, walking through the governance framework. And again, looking at this list, you may think like, hey, my organization, like we're really strong, and like we've got our established the roles and responsibilities of people, the teams that are there. We have a bunch of clearly defined policies and standards. We're really good at SharePoint, which is our intranet. We've cleaned up over the last couple of years how people use Teams and other third party tools that are out there that for collaboration with partners and customers and things that are out there. Yet they struggle with number 4, the change management. A change comes through, people are frustrated with, and it's driving the frustrated with putting a request in and not knowing, was it seen, was it understood, what's the status of that thing, and so then when they don't get answers back, that's where shadow IT pops up. So this framework should help you where you have strengths, you have weaknesses. Each one of these is a discussion point to say, like, do we have answers for each of these different areas? Do we have a communication strategy? Do we have the reporting mechanisms in place for this? With Copilot rolling out, it's going to be very different. There'll be a lot of new things. So these are areas what we need to go and strengthen if we're going to be successful across the board. But I would argue that no matter what size of an organization you are, again, I love the wording, the right sizing of this framework. This at least lets you know that governance is bigger than the technology you're deploying. It has to do with all of these other soft skill, operational planning activities. Do you have answers for all of these things? That's really the key. And so just to quickly summarize here, I know we're went a little bit long here, but summary of all of this is that Copilot, there's so much that it can do. Like I was excited when for my single person tenant, my private tenant that I do demos and build things on, being able to go and when Microsoft got rid of the 300 seats requirement for Copilot licensing, I didn't, balk at the $30 a user a month. And I know there's different licensing, there's different things that are out there. If you're using Teams Premium, there's a discounted rate to upgrade to use full Copilot and kind of all those things. But I saw the value immediately. $30 a month for me, for the things that I do off of the basic capabilities of Copilot, I saw value there. But understand the use cases, build that out, leverage the use case, the best practices that are out there, read about what Microsoft does, participate, have somebody in your organization participating in community discussions to understand, what are the challenges that are out there? What are people are sharing their wins, and here's what we did, here's what we experienced. This is how we got it to work. So any problem you run into, I guarantee you, there are a dozen YouTube videos out there of somebody out there, MVP, RD, not, that is, I've had this experience, here's what we did. And then having sound governance across the board for all these things will help you with the fundamentals of all of the issues that you'll run into with Copilot deployment. So with that, just to very quickly wrap up, I don't know if you've watched any of in this series, we've outlined this. We do have governance offerings. So if you go to Smarter Consulting, our website, you'll see these on the governance page under services. But we have very quickly the governance assessment. So this is it's a small footprint, of course, depending on the size of your organization. But the idea is to help you go in and create that baseline to define where you are. So we base this off of the maturity model guidance. We have our own activities that are underneath that. We have our experts, multiple experts that are involved. We go in and help you to establish that baseline so you have a better understanding of what you need to do to get to your vision of that future space. The tune-up offering builds upon that. So the assessment is part of that. But this is where we actually help you go and set it all up. And we actually do that on your behalf. So if you don't have the staff, the resources to go and deploy this, we can help you pilot and build that out and structure, make sure that you have the governance structure in place to be successful going forward. This is a lot of train the trainer activities around this. So we can help you with that initial deployment to make sure that you're on the right path for success. And then the last piece is specifically around Copilot readiness. So if it's Copilot, I mean, that's what we're talking about here, because these are the governance assessment and the tune-up are across everything in your environment. Copilot readiness is specifically, it's a deep dive into training and optimization of that, the piloting, kind of all of those things inclusive. And we're doing a lot of those now. In fact, Galen just got back from doing Copilot readiness training. So we're doing this. It's becoming more and more common. And if you are interested in finding out more about these things, we do offer a free consultation. So take advantage of that for 30 minutes, hear a bit about what your organization is trying to accomplish and how we can help. Leaving some dramatic quiet space here so people can snap a picture of the QR code. Yes, you can pause the video too, but yeah, there it is. But
yeah, you can sign up. You can sign up there for us to give you a call back, for us to reach out to you. You can always catch up with any of us on any of our socials too. Just reach out and let us know. Happy to help you.
Yeah. So with that, thank you everybody for watching, for participating, and Sharon and Galen. I'll see you at the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody.